Hey gang, so we're going to continue using the distributive property to factor, and we're going to use it to solve equations today. So first we're going to call upon the zero product property. The zero product property says that if A times B equals 0, then either A equals 0, B equals 0, or both equals 0. So remember, if we have anything times 0 is 0, that's essentially what this is saying. If A times B equals 0, then one or both of them have to be 0. So we're going to use that in a bit to think about how we are going to factor and then solve. So when we solve equations by factoring, the first thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we rearrange the equation so that everything is equal to 0. So we're going to rearrange equation to equal 0. We're going to rearrange the equation to equal 0. Then we're going to factor. And at this point, we're going to factor by either pulling out the greatest common factor or by grouping. Remember, grouping is very much a way to factor. Factor by pulling out the GCF and by grouping. Then we're going to set each factor. Set each factor equal to 0. Why can we do that? Because if the whole equation is equal to 0, and we can create factors, so we can make it a multiplication statement, then we know that we can set each of those factors equal to 0 and then solve for the variable. We can then solve for the variable from there. Alright? So if we set if we set both of those factors equal to 0, then we can solve and we can find one, maybe two, maybe more values for our x. So if we have to solve the group x minus 2 times the group 4x minus 1, what we're going to do is we're going to take each of these factors, x minus 2 equals 0 and 4x minus 1 equals 0. And we're going to set each of those equal to 0, then we're going to solve, so plus 2. So x equals 2, also plus 1, so 4x equals 1, divide by 4, so x equals 1/4. So the answer is both of these, x equals 2 or x equals 1/4. It's very important we have both. Now, if we're asked to solve and we have 14c plus 2c equals 0, I need to rearrange on my desk here a little bit. 14c plus 2c equals 0. First thing we need to do, is it equal to 0? Yes. Great. Now we need to factor. Let's see, between 14c squared and 2c, my greatest common factor is going to be 2c. So what's left at each term? 7c plus 1 equals 0. So now I'm going to set both of these equal to 0, so 2c equals 0, 7c plus 1 equals 0. So when I divide by 2, I see that c equals 0. I subtract 1, 7c equals negative 1, divide by 7, so c equals negative 1/7. And again, it's both of these. And yes, we have two solutions in this case. C equals 0 or c equals negative 1/7. Now we have 4y equals 12y squared. We need to do a bit of rearranging so that our equation equals 0. So let's see, I'm going to subtract 4y over this way, and I'm going to get then that 0 equals 12y squared minus 4y. At this point, I'm going to look 12y squared, 4y, my greatest common factor is going to be 4y, so I'll be left with 3y minus 1. I'll set each of those equal to 0, so 4y equals 0, 3y minus 1 equals 0. So over here we see that y equals 0, 3y equals 1, so y equals 1/3. Again, yes, fractions are okay. We could get both whole numbers, that's fine. Fractions are okay, and we need to remember we follow these 4 steps. We need to rearrange the equation to equal 0. We need to factor using the greatest common factor or grouping, whichever the case. We need to set each factor equal to 0, and then once we do that, we solve for the variable. So for our practice problems, we're one page back from yesterday, so page 1164, questions 9 through 12, and then 39 through 44. So number 9, we have 3k times the group k plus 10 equals 0. So here we're going to use that zero product rule to say 3k equals 0, k plus 10 equals 0. So over here we know that k equals 0. And when we subtract 10, we see that k equals negative 10. And there are two solutions. All right? Have fun, rewatch, read the book, do some research. Not understanding it is not an excuse.